And Happy New Year to everyone. Happy New Year from Detroit. My name is Diane Cheklich, and my co-director of the film, Diane Weiss, is also joining us this evening from Philadelphia. I really appreciate everyone coming out tonight. I see Doug and Martha on the call, and hello again. Met you down when you came and saw the film down in Detroit, so it's good to see you again. I'm going to be giving a short slideshow to start, and then we will show our film, Pheasants of Detroit. Can everyone see that? Okay. So most people don't typically associate pheasants with Detroit, right? It's usually like we're the Motor City or music or sports, but we have this well-kept secret called Ring-necked Pheasants, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that tonight. My slideshow will include some basic pheasant facts that you may or may not be aware of since you're an Audubon group. Pheasants in Detroit specifically, and some of the human connections that that pheasants and people have over time, and then how those connections have turned into stories, which inspired the film that we'll see afterwards. So some pheasant facts. There are 29 species of pheasants worldwide. Most, if not all of them, have come from Asia, including our own ring-necked pheasant over here on the left. They were imported to the US as a game bird back in the 1800s. You can see some other of the Asian pheasants, which look even more exotic than ours, but they're all in a similar type of a size and body shape. A typical pheasant family is shown here, with the male having the striking colors with the dark head and the red face and the white ring around its neck, which gives it its name. Female is more brown and muted, and you can see her and her babies there. Though these are all actual Detroit pheasants, except for this photo. This is a stock picture. They don't fly very far. They're short distance flyers, and they get flushed out easily for those of you who have seen them in a hunting context, and they fly fast, but not far. And something you may not have known is that the ring-necked pheasant is the state bird of South Dakota. And if you look at the commemorative quarter, you know, those quarters that each state has, the one for South Dakota actually features a pheasant flying over Mount Rushmore. Pheasants are grassland birds, and so they share the same type of habitat with some other familiar birds, the bobolink, eastern meadowlark, eastern bluebird, for example. They all share the same habitat. So habitat for one is habitat for all, and that's one of the things that that is important to note here. Even though pheasants are not native to the US, these other birds are, and they all share the same habitat, which is in pretty serious danger. Grasslands, you may know are really the most disturbed and destroyed habitat and the least protected. You know, people see long grass, and we think that's something that's got to be mowed or developed, and habitat for pheasants and other grassland birds has taken a serious hit. However, there are opportunities to acknowledge that problem and fix it. And in Detroit, for example, we have a lot of open space, and that's one of the key things of key reasons why we have pheasants in Detroit. You can see this photo here that Diane took of a pheasant basically in front of the Ren-Cen and the iconic buildings in downtown Detroit. And we have pheasants walking around down there because there's some open space that that is good habitat for them. And I like to call it Detroit's accidental grasslands. You can see a good shot of some of them here against the Detroit skyline. Detroit has lost more than half of its population since the 50s, and it's a very large city in terms of footprint, 139 square miles. And so with that population loss comes a lot of vacant land, approximately 19 square miles of open space in Detroit. So you can see some examples here of this accidental grassland, and you can see a pheasant on the right that has found a home there. So one of the things that we're working on at Detroit Bird Alliance, formerly Detroit Audubon, is to convert that accidental grassland into an intentional grassland or an intentional habitat. People see overgrown space like the one on the left and equate that with blight. You know, no one's there. There's no, this actually used to be or still is, property that belongs to the Detroit Parks and Recreation Department. But all the playground equipment is long gone. It hasn't been maintained as a traditional park, and it's overgrown turf grass. So people see that and they think, oh, that's blight. No one's paying attention. Let's dump garbage there. And it causes a lot of problems, not the least of which is, you know, these eyesore types of situations. So Detroit Audubon / Bird Alliance partnered with the city of Detroit over 5 years ago to form a program called Detroit Bird City. You see the logo for that program on this slide. And what we're doing is taking these disused park properties and converting them into native wildflower meadows. So that before and after image is for that same park in Detroit. So it's intentional in that it has native wildflowers in it, which are appealing to the human eye. We put signage in there, pathways, and benches, all of which are inviting to humans and sends the message that this is intentional. It's supposed to be this way. And so, so that's a program. This park, you can see the sign there. It's called Callahan Park, was the first one in the program. And between the years of 2017 and 2022, 8 acres of parkland was restored into native habitat. And the city was happy with how that went. And so it actually incorporated a plan to conserve 30% of parklands by 2030, and working its way up from 13 new acres in 2023, 21 more acres in 2024, up to 1,500, which is the 30% goal by 2030. So it's an ambitious conservation program. Hats off to the city of Detroit for adopting that, and Detroit Bird Alliance is one of the key partners to implement this program, and we're very excited about it. And so this habitat creates intentional spaces and improved quality, much better than overgrown turf grass, for our pheasant friends. And there are a lot of pheasants in Detroit. They're mostly in neighborhoods, and they resonate with a lot of people. You can see these are some actual images of pheasant-inspired things around Detroit. We've got our Detroit Bird City merch. Someone actually painted a pheasant on an Easter egg. There are pheasant walks that happen that are sponsored by the DNR and Detroit Bird Alliance. One of the local naturalists actually designed a little pheasant pin, and you can see this young man in the middle who's smiling and sporting his pin. There's a young man on the right who has a pheasant feather, and he came on our downtown Pheasant Walk last year. So a lot of people, you talk about pheasants and it seems like everybody has a story. Artists are inspired. You see some of the examples, and these are all uncoordinated with each other. They've just popped up in different places. This one up on the left is a pair of pheasants that are on fences. There's a dumpster in there, so they're on the dumpster bay. And here's a neighborhood that's got a pheasant on their logo, and an apartment building. So it's really kind of cool. You drive around the city and you see all these things. There's a lot of pheasant inspired products. We've got a couple of breweries that have names and artwork and limited edition bourbon that's inspired by pheasants, greeting cards, beers. So it's this really interesting phenomenon all around the city. A lot of pheasant murals, and you'll see some of these in the films. Again, all really uncoordinated with each other, but there's a pretty big collection when you step back and look at it. So all the pheasant stories that we heard really inspired us to make this documentary film that we'll be showing here in a minute, called Pheasants of Detroit. It premiered in 2022 at the Freep Film Festival, which is the documentary film festival put on by the Detroit Free Press. And all told, we've been in 9 different festivals around the country and around the world, and won awards in several of those. So it's been a real fun journey for me and Diane. We took 5 years to make the movie. Pheasants are not really the most cooperative film subjects, but we were very diligent, and it gave us something to do during the pandemic. And we captured a lot of interesting footage that you'll see when you see the film. The movie actually got quite a bit of media coverage as well. It was in the Fresh Coast Film Festival up in Marquette in October of 2022. And one of the people who attended that was Dan Wanshura, who works out of Interlochen Public Radio. And Dan proposed a podcast called Pheasants of Detroit. And so we got to collaborate with Dan in putting that out, and it got picked up by NPR. And just kind of this nice little trail of attention that we've had throughout the course of the film. So it's been a lot of fun to see where it goes over time. One of the things we've also done is community screenings, not unlike this one, where people come and hear the stories. You can see there's been real nice turnout. The image on the left is actually in a theater in Traverse City, and libraries have shown interest in it. The picture at the bottom is a local brewery in Detroit that was named after pheasants, and so we had this kind of pheasant beer and pheasant film screening event, and it's just been a lot of fun to experience all these different things and to let people learn about these cool birds that are in Detroit that most people haven't heard of before. So with that, you are now about to see the film for yourself. Really appreciate your attention, and I'll screen the film. And then if you have time for questions afterwards, I'd be happy to stick around and chat. Okay. All right, can everyone see that all right? Yes? All right, here we go.
One day I was in the kitchen doing something and I heard this call and I stopped and I said, what is that? And I was trying to figure out where was the sound. I ran to the front, it wasn't there. I ran to the back porch, and there staring straight at me through the window was this pheasant. And it was like it was talking directly to me. And it was so beautiful, I started crying.
Okay, anyone else for binoculars? All right, we're gonna head out. Detroit is probably the only major city in the whole US that has a population of wild game birds walking around, like literally on urban streets, right? You mentioned you saw them along the highway and they're all over the city. You don't see pheasants in New York or Chicago or San Francisco. So it's sort of a cool thing that's unique to Detroit.
I don't think they're found in other large cities like this, but the habitat that pheasants thrive in is a lot of what the vacant land is like here in the city of Detroit.
Detroit, with its depopulation, has resulted in a lot of open space that's gone natural like this. And it's generated habitat for birds like pheasants.
One thing that I really love about the pheasants is just telling often non-Detroiters that we have pheasants here. And I think they're always pleasantly surprised and shocked sometimes.
I do know there are pheasants out in rural areas, but I was very shocked that there were some in the city of Detroit, especially.
I was shocked when I first moved to this area to see them. I feel like they're just uniquely Detroit. It's kind of like the natural version of a coney dog or something, you know? There's one right now. So it just feels like a deeper Detroit experience, like in the neighborhoods.
You can go up Lawton any time of the day and just ride all the way down to the boulevard, and either side of the fields, left or right, you'll see a pheasant or two somewhere. And nobody's distracting them no more than the kids trying to chase them and catch them.
Where did he go? Oh, hey, right there. There is a bush right there. Oh, Diane! Whoa, that's scaring me. He was right there.
I found them to be beautiful and like mysterious because the way that they just pop up and then disappear so quickly. And it'd be like 2 or 3 of them. And I'm like, okay, why do pheasants keep popping up at my house? And my sister Nico said, you should read up on pheasant totem medicine. And when I read up on it, I was like, yo, that's my spirit animal.
Well, I had a friend visiting from California, and he was traveling around the country, and he needed some traveling money, and the front of my house needed to be painted. And he said he would do it for $400, and I thought that was a great price. So I let him paint a mural on the front of my house. And he was obviously very taken with the pheasants in Detroit because there are 3 on the front of the house.
Before we even thought about buying the house, there was Phil. And Phil was walking along the side yard next to us, and that was it. I said, we have to buy this house because there can't be anything more remarkable than seeing a pheasant walking alongside the house. So the rest is history. We bought the house. 5 o'clock in the morning, he starts crowing. So you know, Phil's up, so it must be time to get up and get the day on.
That's what they sound like. I'm not sure. So if you hear the, like there's the crowing sound that they make, they call it crowing. And then afterwards, the flapping, they actually flap their wings when they do that. So they'll be on like a high sort of conspicuous location sometimes, on a log or something like that off the surface of the ground. And they will beat their wings on their side like this. So that's what you're actually hearing. So if you're close enough to them in real life, you can hear that too.
They wake me up in the morning and I still be tired.
Oh, that's my alarm clock. He wakes me up every morning, and when he wakes me up, I got to get up because he's not gonna let you go back to sleep.
I saw these when I was there in that neighborhood.
The pheasants are as much my neighbor as anybody else here. And I'm regretting the day when there's more development and that's gonna get rid of the pheasants. So I'm hoping that some of these lots will stay and that, if I could buy more lots and keep some of the habitat that allows the pheasants to just live here, I would love to do that.
In other parts of the state, they're actually trying to like recreate the habitat that a pheasant needs to bring pheasants back. And in Detroit, it seems like they seem to be thriving. I mean, I'd like to see some land conserved. I know there's a big project going here. So, I would like to see maybe a park added or some of the trees left instead of everything cleared.
All right, pheasants, come on, good D. Yeah, so how did the name Pork-Time Pheasants come up? What name should we pick? And Detroit's so unusual. There's lots of blocks in Detroit in North Corktown and Corktown that have so few houses and the grass is so long, wild pheasant live in them. And so we said, we're not gonna be the lions, we're not gonna be the tigers or some fierce animal. Well, let's be the pheasants, kind of an ironic joke. And so we loved it. It was really funny. It was very Detroit. And so that's how the Corktown Pheasants came to be. 1, 2, 3.
We just started seeing pheasants like all the time. And then I looked up what would French for pheasant be, and that was faisan. And I just thought the word was beautiful and the birds are beautiful. And it was one of those things where it just felt right. It was like, they make me happy when I see them.
The male has a dark head and a white ring around its neck. And when you hear those caws that we're hearing right now, those are from the male. And they're easier to see.
And remember that the females are very brown and they'll blend in pretty well with all the brown grasses that we have this time of year.
They will lay anywhere from 7 to 15 eggs.
And as soon as the babies hatch, they can walk. And they are ground nesters. So they are at risk for lots of predators. So of course your coyote, your fox, like that. But in urban areas and even maybe rural areas, cats would definitely be predators of young pheasants. So we certainly recommend keeping cats indoors.
They are not very good flyers. They'll fly when they have to, but they'll kind of spurt off the ground and fly maybe up to 600 feet, but then they land again. So you're not going to see them migrating thousands of miles. They're mostly on the ground. When you spook them, they'll usually run away. Sometimes they'll fly.
So they're not a native bird to the United States. They were brought over from Asia to be a game bird.
And so that's what they were introduced for. And so that was back in, I want to say, the mid 1800s. So they've been around in the country ever since then.
The pheasant's arrival to Detroit is similar to the people's arrival to Detroit, whether it was migration or forced migration. Pheasants were brought here. They weren't asked to be here, but they made the best of their circumstances. And then over time, they've always been shifting with what's been given to them. And that's why they thrive in vacancy.
I'm a non-native, you know, I grew up in the Kalamazoo area, but since I moved here in 2007, I was just amazed and inspired by the pheasants that had found their home here. Partly personally, just because they're non-native too, you know, so I just felt this like kinship with them as other beings that are not native to Detroit, but have found a home here.
I moved to Detroit about a year ago, and I actually saw my first pheasant probably in December. So ever since I saw one, now I like go looking for them. Pheasant. So crazy, they just disappear right there. Oh my God. Oh my God, that was awesome. I knew it. I knew I was gonna see one today. And that's a really pretty one. Oh, he has a girlfriend. Oh, he back. That is why. He's back. Oh my God. Total full colors.
If you go around the city of Detroit, there are several murals with pheasants on them. We have other artists who have been inspired by pheasants.
We've really enjoyed watching the artwork pop up. I think it just feels like you're connected to all these different neighborhoods in the city, right?
Like there's no one way to paint a pheasant, and everyone has their own artistic style. So every time you apply it to a pheasant or a bird, period, but specifically a pheasant, it's always going to be different. And it's always going to show up different in the world. Like at I think Red Hook, there's pheasants in there, and it's like, huh, they kind of like blended in until they didn't, and now I can't not see them, right? And just anywhere else that pheasants are, that's just how pheasants are. And I think anytime an artist puts their interpretation into what they want the pheasant to look like, it's beautiful and it's just reminiscent of the city. Most, if not all of my murals are reflective of the community that they exist in. And because this recreational center, that used to be a recreational center, is in the middle of 3 different places, I was trying to figure out what's common between Hamtramck, Detroit, and Highland Park. Yeah. And I think pheasants was the one.
So I'm thinking about, I'm going to actually carve away into this, like with this project of preserving some of this open space, the diorama, so that there's maybe some of these corridors that are some of the rings of the city where there's development, but then there's still also these open areas. So maybe the diorama will become more of a model for the future of what it could be. Sort of a pheasant utopia, huh?
We named ourselves Rising Pheasant, both because there's nothing more amazing than watching a pheasant rise up out of the, you know, totally unsuspecting, you know, they, you know, sometimes scare the crap out of you because you don't know they're right there. They squawk and they make a big show of it, but they're just really majestic and amazing to watch them soar. People think we raise pheasants, you know, that we're selling pheasants at the market. Like, oh no, they're just a lot in our neighborhood. Like, oh, really? And I hope that it gives people an opportunity to think differently about the city. You know, like, oh, if this one thing surprised me about the city, what else might surprise me about the city? What else am I making all sorts of assumptions about the people, about the place? You know, or what are the things am I making assumptions about when it comes to what is beautiful?
So everybody saw at least one pheasant, right?
All right. Thank you very much.